All right, so this is chapter 2, e-business technology basics. I'm not gonna go into each of these slides, but what I'm gonna do is just go to the important parts of it, and the rest you can read in the book. Okay, so I'm gonna skip through these learning objectives and go straight to the lesson proper. And this is about computer, well, the internet and the World Wide Web. Okay, so later on we're gonna talk about more clearly what the web is and how that differs from the internet. Okay, so this slide basically talks about how the internet began, and it's a very interesting history. It started in the 1960s as a project by the US government, Defense Department. They wanted to develop a network which would withstand nuclear attack. And so the way the internet works is it's very resilient. It is built in such a way that even though you destroy one part of the internet, the rest will continue to function. And so that is what we have today. That is why it has continually grown and it's proven very resilient. Okay, so I move here. The growth of the internet. The internet, since it was developed, has continually grown. It was only during 1990s when the internet was used really for e-commerce. So it is around this time. So if you can think of 1990s as where it started, you really have 30 years of the internet, and so it is relatively a new phenomenon since it's been around only 30 years. This chart shows the growth of the internet, and you can see that it has continually grown, and until today it has been growing even at a faster rate. Now, the internet, as we have mentioned, was built in the 1960s, but it is important to remember that the web itself makes use of the internet, and the web itself really became popular during the 1990s, and that is when all these websites came out, like Amazon, Dell, Yahoo. Okay, and these are the ones which are still surviving today. eBay also came around during this time. Um, but other websites went out of business when the dot com bust happened. Okay, so this slide here really talks about who developed the web. Some persons, you can see 1989, Tim Berners-Lee developed this, and it's still what we use today essentially, though there has been a lot of improvement. So we're going to go into more detail about these different aspects of the World Wide Web later on. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about some concepts on the World Wide Web. The web and the internet as well can be connected locally, meaning close together, like inside a company, or it can also be connected globally. So you can also talk to, or a computer can communicate with somebody or someone, another computer across the world. So that is how powerful the internet is. So when you are grouping computers together, close close proximity, meaning near to each other, like inside a company, then you call this a local area network. So in your lab, for example, there, you will have a local area network wherein there might be some server and you might access files or a website from that server. Okay, and this is very common in companies when the companies want to share information. There is also such a thing as wide area networks, and that is when you access, um, again, a website or files from across the country or in another country. Okay, so these are just the two terms I'd like you to remember: local area network and wide area network. I'm gonna skip through some of these other concepts like circuit switching because they're not really that important. Now let me just talk a little bit about packet switched networks. Packets. The important thing to remember here is the internet. Um, when you send a message from one computer to another, that message is actually divided into small pieces. So the thing about it is, as it is divided into small pieces, the pieces may are sent out individually across the internet to another server. Okay, this is the technological well, the technical term for that is packet switching or packet switch networks. Um, the only thing I can say about which is interesting here is, for example, you are sending a movie to another computer. Some of these packets in the movie might not reach the destination, especially if you're streaming the movie. Um, so that is the nature of the way the internet works. But in certain cases where you really need to have every single piece back, like let's say you're transferring a document, that every piece has to be back, then the internet has a way of making sure that every piece is received. Okay. Anyway, this is what that is the basic foundation of the internet. It is packet switched. Okay, when you talk about routing, let me just talk a little bit about routing computers because this is another common term on the internet. Routing really is about um, the idea that a packet will move before it can reach its destination. It will be transferred from one host to another until it reaches its destination. So, for example, I send you a email from this computer right here. I type it and I send it to you there in Tokyo. This message will actually go through different computers before it reaches your destination. Okay, that's why you call it routing. There is a concept of routing on the internet. Now, of course, there are hardwares to make all of this possible. And when we talk about, as you can see, this interesting diagram. So you have here a LAN. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me try that again. So you have something like a LAN here, right? And connected to a WAN. You can see that they are all the same thing. The company would have a LAN inside and a WAN perhaps, and this WAN would be connected via another device called a router so that it can reach other parts, let's say another area of the internet or another company or another university. So you see the internet is really made up of the same things. Okay, so LAN for local communication, WAN for you to send a message outside your company, and routers to actually transmit the packets. So that's how pretty much the internet works. Now, another thing which characterizes the internet is it actually makes use of what you call is open. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, it's an open architecture. So when you say open architecture, it simply means that the internet is something which everybody can see how it works. Anybody who is interested can actually see how it works. So you can actually build any piece of software on top of the internet. So the nice thing about this is if you can see how something works, if it is not working properly, you can point it out and improve it, right? And everybody can participate because it is an open architecture. So that's what I mean when we say open architecture. It is something where everyone can participate, can improve it. And that is why the internet you use in Tokyo is the same as the internet we use here in Singapore because we can see the same thing. So this internet which has been developed, which has been open, has been used ever since it was developed in 1960s. It's the same system. There's another term on the internet. It's called TCP/IP. It is a technical term which I won't go into, but it basically when you say TCP/IP, it is a method of how the internet works. So if the network follows TCP/IP, you are referring to the internet. Okay. Now we won't go into the details of what TCP/IP and how it works. I've already talked about one aspect of it, the idea where you transmit packets of information, where the message is actually divided into smaller pieces. That is an example of TCP/IP. All right. Another common, so that's the foundation of the internet, that you break it into packets, and that's TCP/IP. Now, IP, when you talk about IP, another characteristic of the internet is it actually makes use of what you call IP addressing. Okay, so IP addressing really is, let me make this yellow. Okay, what IP addressing really is that it makes, you actually give it, you give every host, or not just a host, but every device on the internet is a unique number. Okay, and that is what you call IP address. So that is the, that is a characteristic of the internet, that every device should have a special number. Okay. Now the interesting thing about it is, since now we have so many mobile devices on the internet, um, we're actually running out of numbers to give. Um, so they actually had to modify the system a bit to allow for more um, devices, because eventually not just your computers, your notebooks will be on the internet, but, and not only your mobile phones, which are billions of mobile phones, but also all everyday appliances will have to be given a special address. Okay, so the thing about it is, the internet had to be modified and improved to allow for this huge amount of devices which will be connected to the internet. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of these as they are not important, but here is an example of what I talk about. This is the Internet Protocol version 6. If you ever hear this term, it simply means that the internet, the old internet, was modified, improved to allow for much more, a greater number of devices to connect to the internet. Okay, so let me just summarize here at this point. Okay, just so to summarize before I go into other topics, I just want to emphasize what the internet is. The internet really is a network of computers which could be close together, network close together in a LAN, or far away from each other and in what you call a WAN. They will talk to each other in the same way, whether it's close together or far away, right? That is the power. That's why it's a global network. And at the same time, I want to emphasize that the web uses the internet. It is not the internet. It makes use of the internet. It makes use of the same TCP and IP system protocol to make the internet possible. So the internet is the foundation of the web. You know, when you do Facebook, Twitter, you're really still using the foundation of the internet. Okay, I hope that is clear. So I will stop here first, and then we can move on to the next topic.